parents are,
Okay,
I think
so it's
I think there's a little shift away from academics, or that the worry, I would say, towards academics. And part of it is there's a lot more written now. There's a lot more about executive function, lots of, you can read about it in the New York Times, or I don't know if Newsweek still exists, but magazines,
Yes.
lots of magazines have more and more about this. And also there's been a lot more neuroscience around
I'm
why
gonna send it
these
to
kinds
your
of things come to
email.
Whole Brain Child.
Okay.
It's a good book because they bring in the neuroscience, and one of the things they say is that like fires together, wires together. So how you respond to kids and the things you say and what they're getting out of what you say, if it's that, oh, we're all gonna make this work out, or no, we're more goal-oriented towards each other, really can affect brain development and what and how they are thinking about things later and what they're worried about.
So you're saying you think that there's a correlation between more academic
And
preparation
Well,
oriented
really
preschools,
need
like
to,
that could be the correlation
need to bring myself
between
up to the
some of the
new world.
like they need to do this.
They
And they're losing time when they're doing their politics.
well, and also they're being, I think the message is this is real learning.
Right.
And that stuff that's new
Like,
and
it's a
right.
waste of
That's
time.
It
right.
is, it's broadcasting.
That is my first child, so like when I started reading now things that I thought back like 10 years ago when my friends started having kids were completely different. But you doing what you're doing for a long time. So like that's how now it's kind of almost like trendy, right? Because people have the research
Yeah.
based
Yeah.
on your method of doing things.
You want me to take a screenshot?
Rather than 10, 20 years ago what people thought would be the correct.
Oh, really?
And I'm fine with it if it's kind of seen as a trend.
I sent that, yeah, I sent that like,
More people are exposed to it, and I think once you try this stuff out, you get how it works. And also, it feels good to you as the parent, and I think it feels really good to kids.
Yeah.
So I'm fond of saying,
yeah,
hi, George.
okay, because I don't know.
I'm fond of
going
saying,
through
well,
email.
after
How about I take a
47
picture?
years, researchers finally came up with part of this. Because we have always been play-based, always a half day, always enrolling students through this lottery. And it's such a part of who we are. And one of the reasons this can happen here, I think, is that we have long-term staff. So it's very unusual for a nursery school. This is my 30th year on staff. Before that, I was a parent here for 5 years. Anita, I don't know, we still haven't added up all your years. What do you think? 35 is where we started,
How, they just come to work here?
I think part of it has been.
No, I mean, like
Yeah.
turnover at
This is
other
Well, one is that we get a lot of respect and recognition, and also have a lot of autonomy from all of you, and the support of all of the parents. We have a lot of autonomy in our classrooms,
Chris, that's really hard to
and
see.
I think the collaborative part of it is the most important. The idea that we're all co-teachers. It's not you alone in your classroom. And not only the team in each classroom, but the staff as a whole has always worked together, thought together, talked things over to death. So, and we're like-minded. And Jane's very good person, very good at choosing people to hold into staff, and then creates a long bench. Somebody doesn't just get hired and start. Usually you start in a small capacity and
Another thing I can do
maybe
is I can
sub
invite
or maybe assist and roll
addresses.
into the culture. And so I think those are the main reasons that most of us have stayed so long.
And really having long-term staff means as new people come in, really the teachers here go through, I would say, an apprenticeship, being an assistant. So David Butler was an assistant teacher here for 6 years.
I can
And
go
came
to
to me and said,
when I just go to
another
JP,
school, somebody who's been there 6 years, they'd be the lead teacher. I know, but not here. And so when
Anita's not
I think a lot of it is the satisfaction piece, and also, a lot of our work is, a lot of our teachers are social justice people. And so when they come to me as college students, part of what I say to them is, you're interested in social justice, it starts right here with little kids. This is where these kinds of things begin. But for our staff, I agree, we have lots of conversations all the time, informally every day at lunch about stuff, and then we have a weekly staff meeting on Friday. I think probably a lot of parents are unaware, we don't talk about it so much, but really we should inform parents in a deeper way about our conversation. So when we were developing our curriculum guide, we didn't really have a curriculum guide until about 11 years ago. And our philosophy statement, we sat down I didn't write it, we sat down together
maybe
and
I
said,
can
what do you
text
think should be in this?
From James.
And we took a whack at it, and then some of it we worked on and then passed to somebody else, and then when we got together, then we talked about it.
Okay, here, I'll send
And
it.
as we wrote it, we put it on these big pieces of paper, and I missed a little bit of school for a while, and when I came back, do you remember this? They had all the paper all the way around. And I will say, one of the funny things I think about when we wrote the curriculum for the philosophy statement, that the first thing it talked about was, we don't believe in this, and we don't think this, and we're not gonna make kids do this, and we're not gonna do that. I said, and so I said, well, this is all true, but why don't we start with what we do believe in, and then we'll segue to the stuff that we find
Did that come across?
irrelevant to kids, or damaging to kids, or not going in the direction that we feel we need to go in. But you know, when I look for teachers, I don't look for somebody who's a teacher. I look for somebody who's very smart, somebody who is interested in ideas and open to learning new ideas, and somebody who respects all people. Those are the three criteria that are important to me, because
Alright,
we
thank
work
you so
in a
much,
very
Chris, I appreciate
specific way.
Okay.
And often, when younger people come to be the assistant teacher, they'll say, well, you know, I'm not a teacher, that's okay. And I am pretty confident that they will become a teacher, because it's very fulfilling work. It's a very happy place to be here among these kids every day, really, it is. And to work with parents. Lots of schools are afraid to have parents around. They're gonna ask too many questions, oh, they're gonna get, no, it's such a joy for us. And really, lots of us were parents here. Me, Anita was a parent, although she started here first. Margaret Jungles, who's our top teacher, she was a parent here first. And then I asked her to come. Same with Kristen Graziano, also a top teacher in the JK Assist. She was a student in our first class. I was not here then, I didn't know her, but she was a parent here with 3 kids, and I knew pretty quickly she would be great on staff. Nada, her daughter went to school here. I don't know who else, but a lot of us. Melinda's son went here, and Joseph's daughter went to school here. They're both retired now.
And I think that not just the curriculum, but every policy, every routine and procedure has been talked over and talked over and talked over. So that really feels good to be a part of that, to have that kind of investment.
It's a huge part of the culture here at school. Teachers expect a lot of autonomy. And I think what happens in the classroom is mirrored in every part of school as an organization. The way we work with kids is the way we work with each other. It's the way the board works. Lots of people coming together in the same room to strategize and to figure out directions for school to go in, what's good for school, what isn't good for school.
And everyone has a voice. That's right. Everyone gets to have a turn in this.
You feel that in our side too, right? Even as a new parent, here, I see this as a reflection on us, I guess. We can probably relate it to like.
So watch out. You may one day be on staff here. That's our time. And we have 5 more minutes before we Skype in with Heather. Do people have questions like that you want to ask? Great.
Maybe I'm not that smart or haven't read enough of the book, but I feel that a situation I've seen and worry about a lot for my little one is that maybe he doesn't want to share, but then some other little one takes the thing from him, and I'm struggling to know what to do, or like I don't have good phrases. I myself feel a little bit like a deer in the headlights in that moment, to be honest.
Yeah.
I just, and that's the theme that I don't, does this book speak to that, or
Mhm.
I'm not really, what do you do?
He's getting the Audible copy. We already discussed that, so you can listen to
Do
it
you
on the
have
train.
just one child?
Yes.
So this is, this piece of it was like hard for me too, but now I have two, and my youngest one is now old enough to want to be a part of what the older one is doing. So I think one thing that like she talks about in the book is that someone gets to play with something as long as they want, and it's theirs until they're done with it. So like if one of my children goes and takes something out of the other one's hand, I say to the one that was using it, "Are you done?" And tell the other one if you're done or not. And if you're not done, then it's still your turn. And the other one can wait, and you can tell us, please, when you're done with your turn, and then they can have a turn. That's how we do it at our house now, and that's what she talks about in the book, and that's what I had seen here at Park West, and it's much better to me than like trying to make them share, because that's just a fight.
It's trickier when it's not your two kids.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
It's kind of what we were saying.
Or you're like at the park, you get
Yeah.
I think her examples are like, talk to the kid, like, doesn't she say
Yeah,
something
but I
like, in
guess
that
the grown-up.
situation, you go, as a grown-up, and you say, he wasn't done with his turn, and he doesn't understand why you're taking it from him, like, or, I don't
We had
know,
a
trying to like.
situation at the park where a little one came and took the soccer ball from ours, but it was like, there's a huge age gap. The other child was older and maybe past kindergarten or something. I couldn't even talk to that person. I don't know, that was just an anecdote, but I felt like,
They're cognizant of that point.
but there's others. That one like stands out in my mind where I was very.
But it's not
It
here,
sounds like
and
a
the kid that should know how to.
I think
Doesn't it?
whoever is it, I think you can say, did you ask if you could have that? I mean, wouldn't you do that with an adult? If I took your book, would you?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't faced that situation a lot, and I didn't want to make the adult mad and stuff. So I mean, maybe that's in like, I don't know.
I think she also talked about, she had great adult analogies. She's like, you know, like, this isn't exactly the thing, but she said like, what if someone came over and took your laptop away from you? Like, that's what it feels like for a kid. Like these things that seem small, but they're super important in the same way, something that you would never want to share. If someone took that from you, that's how you picture the child feeling, so you have to help them navigate in a way like that is really a crucial moment and such a personal loss for them. Like if someone came and took your laptop.
Yeah.
Well,
They
I think you
didn't know.
can narrate too. I think you can narrate what happened. Oh, you know, Robbie was using the ball. Did you really want to have a turn? Well, he's still going to use it, but maybe you could have a turn when he's finished. I think having a script, you know, kind of in your hip pocket can really help, because when you're in that moment, it is very uncomfortable, and you don't know how's the parent going to react, how's the kid going to react, how's my kid going to react.
Yeah, I think the most awkward part is when you actually, if it's a friend,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
they're not intervening or doing anything about it, and you don't want to cause any sort of rifts in
Yeah.
their friendship or their relationship, but you're just kind of like, what we're trying to tell them, that's not good behavior, or that's, they didn't make a good decision is what we've been trying to tell them. It's like, just, you know, it maybe, I think we saw it happen, you know, recently. It happens quite frequently, unfortunately, with this friend.
Well,
Child.
I think she has some good language in here about that, and I think it is focusing on, well, you know what we've been working on, is
Right.
blah, blah, blah.
Yes, right, yeah.
137,
137.
8 and 9. I mean, because we're doing, my wife and I, Jackie, are dealing with this with our kids right now too. And I also get worried that my daughter is playing with things too long, and gosh, doesn't she, we were talking about this tonight, doesn't she have something else? Why does she always play the same game? That's gonna be a real problem. Why can't she play like CEO instead of?
Let's see.
Look, she promised.
Yeah,
So
why-
Heather's trying to get a hold of
Okay,
us.
great.
I think we are live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, Park West Co-op. Here we are at our beautiful new home in Bissell. And we've started the conversation already. We had a few technical difficulties. I know that's a huge surprise to all you park watchers. But we think we're connecting with you now, and we are about to Skype her with Heather. We hope.
We hope.
Hello. There she is. Hi.
Yay.
Everybody.
Hi. Welcome to Park West Cooperative Nursery School. We're so
Thank you.
excited that you would come and chat with us.
I can't see everyone on the side. Do you have to lean your head? Well, it's great to see Park West. There's not too many toys in the room, I see.
Not this room.
No, because we're sitting in the teacher lunchroom.
Aha.
Because this way everybody could sit in
Yes.
more comfortable chairs instead of our little chairs. So we thought this would be a little more comfortable, and
Do you
we
mean-
like people to eat when we're together, so we have pretty strict rules about what can be in the classroom because of allergies. And so being in here means that parents can eat cheese and popcorn, all kinds of delectables.
But we
Well,
will come visit.
I'm just thrilled. I was thinking about you all, chatting about it's okay not to share the last hour. So I'm sure you've had all kinds of interesting conversation. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I got one too.
Oh, yeah. We have a room filled with guests. Yeah.
Oh, well, it sounds like this is a good fit for your program. So I'm curious to hear the kind of topics that you were the most lively for you today.
Well, part of what we've been talking about is that this book is what happens in our classrooms pretty much every day here in school. And so it's very validating. But one of the things we talked about is how much we liked the ends of the sections where you kind of distill, it's like a little crib sheet of these are things that, see how these things feel. Try to say these kinds of things. How do they feel in your mouth? These are words or phrases that really try to avoid them. And then in particular, one of the things we've been talking about is being faced with uncomfortable situations when we're outside. We had an example at the museum, an example at a playground. And I think you cover that so nicely to prepare parents that this might not be well received in certain circles, and it's going to feel uncomfortable. And so we've just been talking about, well, how does that look? How do you become more comfortable, and what kinds of things do you say?
Right, because until the whole world becomes renegades, we do need to have a little culture clash here and there in when we go out in public. So yeah, it's definitely meant for the real world, because we know that not everybody's going to share these ideas, and so how do you take your beliefs and stand by your beliefs, but still interact respectfully with everybody else? Yeah. Well, I'm glad that was helpful to you. I think it helps that my brain, I just don't have a sharp memory for very long. Ever since I had kids, my brain is like, it sounds
That
familiar.
doesn't have with pregnancy, really?
At the end of the chapters, because I thought, I didn't have any brain at all when I had infants. And I didn't want to read dense chapters. I just wanted to dive in, get a nugget of information, and dive back out again and apply it instantaneously. So that's why that part's there, because that's how my brain works too.
Well, I think it's a huge gift to parents to not just read about the theory or about the school and how things work, but to have some practical strategies in actually the language. And I think that's something that happens here quite a bit, because we're very specific in our language, exceedingly similar to what you have. And we were saying that parents, and we're a co-op, so parents assist. And we were just saying that when you leave the classroom, for a while, you're kind of in the Park West bubble, Park West speak, and parents are saying, well, I sound like Anita, one of our teachers, when I get home. For a while, it can last.
Yeah, and that's probably good. Yeah, well, I love co-op preschools. That to me is a model actually the one that I went to and the one that the book is based on, the philosophy is not a co-op model, but it sort of is, because they have 3 teachers in each classroom, and then there's always parents that are kind of hanging around, some of them because they're just interested in listening and watching how these teachers interact with their kids. You know, how did they get my 3-year-old to do when I have a power struggle at home, or what words are they using, or how did they approach the situation? And they just soak it up. And that's how my mother, who ended up teaching there for 40 years, she didn't know what to do with us. Luckily, I'm a second child. So my brother was the guinea pig, and she didn't know what to do with him. But then she hung around the preschool long enough and soaked it up from all the teachers that then it became part of every fiber of her body. And then she's been able to mentor other people. But I think the co-op model has that built-in system for bringing in, because really the learning isn't just the kids. We know that. The learning is so much what these parents and grandparents and caregivers, it's the adult learning that helps so much. The kids will learn anyway, but for the adults to have a new perspective or a new way of approaching working with kids, that's where some of the real richness comes. So I love it that you're a co-op and can do that every day.
Well, and parent education is a huge part of any co-op, because we're together a lot. And many of our teachers started out, not at all unusual in the world of co-ops, that parents come back to be on staff. I have a question for you, Heather. It comes from one of our parents who is not in this room, but has been wanting to be part of the conversation. Okay, I'd like to talk about how to handle sharing of sibling things. They can't designate all toys as special.
Well, they can try. Yeah, I mean, siblings can be a different case than, say, in a classroom, just because as a family you have to live together. There's that reality that families are sharing the same space, eating the same food, sometimes sleeping in the same bedrooms. So I think of it in some ways, there's certain things that are the inner circle, like special blankie, right? Or a special teddy bear. Those things kids recognize very, very young, that's Joey's blankie, and they're not going to go there. Maybe they will try to steal it because they want to get attention or some other reason, but they do recognize that really inner circle. So those things are very special. There's other things that kind of touch on specialness, and you've all seen this, like a child gets a birthday present or something, and it's really special for a few hours or minutes or days. Depends on the item, but if they're asked to share it right away, it can be, oh, I just got this, and there's a reluctance to do that. So sometimes something's specialness can change within a couple minutes or a couple days, but usually the blankie is always the inner special thing. Different families take different approaches, but usually most things, unless, let's say you have kids of different ages or different levels of impulse control. So if there's an item that is breakable, and if you're going to share it with your 3-year-old brother who likes to crush things or bang things, you know, that's not an item that's appropriate to be shared because they could destroy it. So just there's a lot of common sense that goes into it. But generally at home, I feel as if most items are kind of common family. Anybody who can play with it if you're not currently playing with it, or if you're not in danger of destroying it, right? So you can take turns, and then, yeah, not everything can be designated completely sacred and special. But taking turns could mean that it's a week-long turn, and I'm completely comfortable with that. They will be done eventually.
I've had some good luck with asking kids, well, he wants to have a look at it. Are you gonna take it? Are you gonna take it? Well, he's not gonna take it home, he just wants to hold it, or whatever the request has been. He just wants to look at it and hold it, and then he'll give it back. So sometimes you have to spell it out.
Right. It's funny though, I have older kids. I have a preschooler, but I have a 10 and a 12-year-old. And they're not done with the fighting over stuff. I mean, it's like,
I checked the book out from the library, but you weren't reading it, but I was gonna read it, and I had the intention of getting it. But I'm in the middle of it, so it's mine. Like, I don't really even want to talk to them about those issues, much less, like, I cannot find any justice, and I wish that, maybe if they had gone to Park West, they would be better at it. But I don't know, you know, like, it's just that feeling of like, we have a house full of 3,000 books and they only want the same thing. And still, even the older they get, they don't have enough, like, is it insecurity or, it's the same things as little kids wanting the stuffed animal just because the other person wanted it. And I don't know how you respect those impulses and still make dinner.
Well, yeah, your comment about maybe they should have gone to Park West. My dad was a university professor, so he worked with graduate students, you know, PhDs and postdocs, and he would say, oh, I wish they'd all gone to SYC, you know, preschool, learn how to get on with each other. So that happens with adults too. I think sometimes we can set some guidelines and limits. For example, since you brought up library books, you know, you can decide for your family, this is the way it goes with library books, that it belongs to the person who checked it out until they turn it back in. Or you could say it's library book, that means it belongs to everybody in our city. And I know that as long as you don't lose the place where the bookmark is and somebody's not reading it, it's okay for you to read it. So you can kind of make some decision that makes sense for your family. Like, I know that the living room sofa is somewhere that anybody is welcome to sit. You know, there's some areas that are just public spaces, or I know that you can sing in the kitchen if you want to, and if you don't want to hear your brother singing, you can go outside. But to try to set some basic public space or public property guidelines for a family can help. And if the one you set doesn't quite work, well, readjust it, you know, if nothing's totally set in stone. I think also sometimes, no matter what the ages of the kids or even the adults, it's maybe they're fighting about the thing, but it may be that they just need some time with you. You know, maybe it's really not about the thing at all.
Most likely not, I would say. It's not.
Right, that's it. It always
It's
seems
just
like
a
a
dynamic
neighbor,
with each
like,
other.
you're just
Yeah.
picking on each other.
Well, and it's the same about the language. You really sound mad about that.
Right,
I'm making dinner right now. Let's make a plan to talk about it after dinner or whenever.
right.
Easier to think of it in the abstract than when the
Right.
pasta water's boiled.
You know, all that reflective language stuff and that stating of what you're seeing and the verbalizing that, even for kids that old, is,
Right.
you know,
I
it's
think
good
a lot of
for
this
adults,
applies to the
everyone.
older kids too.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't
I
see
think
it as just
absolutely.
preschool.
I think absolutely, this idea of stating what you're seeing, acknowledging how somebody is feeling, and then saying either, well, we can't figure this out right now, but let's decide when we are gonna talk about it. Okay, after dinner, how about after dessert, when we'll be in a really good mood then.
Right, tell them you hear them and
That's right.
understand they're frustrated.
Yeah.
You can't deal with it.
Yeah, well,
Right,
and
right
you
now.
know, it's good for for everybody. You know, I use this in my work with parents, you know, yeah, I can see you're really worried about this. We'll make a plan, we'll work
But you
together.
did that to me.
See, it worked. But
You
it's,
read the book.
but it's also a really honest way to get to the heart of what's going on.
Yeah.
It's not a trick, it's an
No.
honest way to interact with a person as a person. Not as you're less than me as a kid, or I'm the head of school and you're a parent, I've been doing this a long time. No, it's not about any of that stuff. It's about finding a common language that can, by acknowledging the feeling, being able to hear each other in a different way and be more open to what each other has to say.
Yeah, and I feel that a couple of things you said. One is there's no upper age limit for this. You know, this book supposedly is for preschool age, you know, young children, but people use it on their college kids. People use it on their spouses. You know, it works. Like, because we all have human emotions and we all have conflicts, and that's what all this basically gets down to, is about what you just said. Acknowledging the feelings, trying to make a connection, and try to solve the conflict. And I think by verbalizing it, by stating what you see, you actually help yourself not, bring down maybe your frustration level, your anger level, your whatever you're feeling, oh, that lazy kid, or whatever you might be thinking, because you're trying to state it in this neutral, observational way. Then by saying it out loud, you actually become a calmer parent that's not yelling anymore, because you're doing this method. So it helps yourself as much as helps the kid.
Can I ask, how long ago did you observe the kids that you wrote about, and then have you followed them since and seen their progress compared to, say, other kids from a different type of program?
Well, that's a very cool question. The particular age group, the cohort that I did my research for the book, and that was a group I had to get lots of permission slips from all the parents and all that. That was mostly from 2011. This program, which like Park West has been around for a while, this one's now celebrating its 50th birthday. So it got started in 1969, and I'm a graduate. There's a lot of us out there that are graduates. And I'll just tell you a couple stories. There's one high school teacher in Columbus, Ohio, where this school is located. And she was a high school teacher, but she had young kids at home. And so she started watching her high school students in her own class. And the ones who had the best conflict mediation skills and impulse control and that kind of emotional skills, she asked them, where did you go to preschool? And all of them, there were 3 of them in the class, all of them answered this school for young children. And so she decided to send her own kids there. That was, so you see these skills going up. And another story, there's a young girl, well, she's a woman now, her name's Amira, and she started going to this school for young children at age 2. And they do a lot of, everyday conflict mediation, peace skills. So from age 2 and 3 and 4, she was learning all this, and she credits her preschool for her interest in college. She majored in international relations with a specialty in Western Islam relationships. She's a young Muslim American, and her graduate studies were all in international diplomacy between Muslim and Western nations. And credits her preschool for her interest in this kind of conflict diplomacy. So, that's just some stories about it. It lingers on, and it's not a scientific answer, but you do see the effects through the years. And another effect I think you see, and maybe you see this in your school, is that the graduates of the preschool, when they grow up and have kids, they choose to parent, even if they don't live nearby. Maybe they can't send their kids to the same school, but they choose to parent in the same way that the school taught them. And that's a high compliment, because many people parent in a way that they reject the way they were brought up. Like, I know I don't want to do that, but I don't know what to do. So when you choose to parent in a way that you were brought up, that's a big compliment.
We have usually 6 to 8 children whose parents went to school here. And last year in Anita's class, 3 of those kids, their parents had Anita as a teacher when they went to the school. I have a similar story. We had a parent called me to say she was at the farmer's market, and she was waiting. She was in the line to get some croissants, and there was a grade school kid behind her, and she couldn't decide. So she turned to that child and said, "I just can't decide what I'm going to get. Why don't you go ahead of me?" And he said, "Well, maybe I could help you." Who are you buying for? What do they like? How many of them are there? And the mom looked at him and said, "I have no idea who you are, but I know you went to Parkland School." And he said, "Yes, I did." And people call me with those kinds of stories, and they're gratifying and wonderful. One thing that happens for us is we have a summer camp program here, and usually at least half of our camp counselors are alums who come back, and it's a very thrilling thing for our students. and also for the alums.
Yeah, it's that says it all, you know, just that the graduates are coming back and sending their kids. I was thinking about, I don't know if you got to this part when you were having your book club discussion about some of the social rejection, which is a really dicey topic. But I was thinking of a graduate of the School for Young Children who was used to dealing with setting limits on peers and being able to say, you know, I don't like it when you push me, that sort of limit. Because when she was in an elementary school, she was about 8 or 9, there was a girl who entered her class who had come in from another school and had very bad family situation going on, and she was doing a lot of physical attacking the other kids. And so nobody wanted to be her friend because they were a bit worried they'd get hurt. And so she desperately needed a friend. And she went to every kid in the class trying to, you know, shine up to them and be friends. And she went up to the one kid who was a graduate of this program. And she was the first one who said, I will be your friend if you don't jump on my back, and if you don't push me, and if you don't do this, whatever other thing it was. And after setting those 3 firm limits, the other girl agreed instantly. And then she never did those things. And they had a friendship that really was good for both of them. But I think having that skill of knowing, okay, I can set a limit on a peer and hold them to that. And just, that's so empowering. And for this girl, it was the answer to her life. She needed a friend. So she was able to get in and have a good friendship that year.
One of the things I really like about the book is this idea that kids need limits. When you're in a school like ours, things run really well in the classroom. And sometimes it's hard for parents to see the underlying structure. It can feel like it's very laissez-faire, when really it works because teachers are offering things to kids that they're interested in, they're appropriate, there's a variety, and also the language and the approach, which is the same as the approach in your book, works really well with kids. And I think there can often be a misinterpretation of what's happening in the room. If somebody was saying today, when we were talking earlier, that a parent said, "Well, I've never heard a teacher say no. They don't say no." Well, we do say no plenty, but it might be phrased a little bit differently. So I don't know. Did you all feel the same way about having the limit section?
I like the idea that you talk about kids setting the limits for each other, and that's really empowering. I feel like we've always talked about helping kids describe their feelings and say if it's okay, or I don't like when you do that, but I think the term you use about kids setting their own limits really makes sense to me. It's a good way to refer to it.
They can pick that up. I think they don't get that message much from families or the outside world. So if you can do it in your classroom setting, it opens the world to them, because then they realize that I can, and I think it's a safety thing too. I can set limits on my body. You know, I can set limits on what other people do to me, whether a teacher is in the room or not, whether my mom is around or not. And that's huge for a life skill. Girls particularly, but not just girls, of course. It's just standing up for yourself and learning that you can say no or stop, or you know what you don't like. Stop pulling my shirt. Don't throw sand in my face. Or whatever it is.
Yeah, don't call me a butthead.
Yeah, they always
Right,
say
that's
you
a big one, right?
tell them you don't like it, but I like the very specific. You can say stop. I love that strong stance and putting your hand up. It's great.
Yeah. And that we as adults then we guide them to learn how to set these limits themselves. And sometimes, you know, they talk very quietly.
Yes.
Sometimes kids just whisper, and they're not maybe that verbal, or maybe they are just too shy to be doing it. But we can, usually if we get down really close, we can hear what they say and just repeat it. I heard Jillian say she doesn't want this.
Yeah.
And it's not us saying it, but we're just repeating, kind of being a loudspeaker, because they might whisper too much. And that's what Jillian said, can you follow Jillian's rule? And then that's peer-to-peer, and there's a lot of being beholden to the other kid that's very powerful. Because in their imaginative play, they want to make the game work.
Yeah.
There's real motivation to keep the game going, and so they want to follow each other's rules if it's sensible. You know, if they don't want to follow the rule, they'll go play somewhere else.
Well, and that's part of playing together. To make it work, you give something up to keep the game going. I wanted it to be a tall tower, but you have a different idea. Okay, I'll go with your idea this time. Maybe we'll go with my idea next time. So usually in cooperative play, you're giving something up in order to keep that play going. And that's a good thing.
Well, then, like, that collaboration of play is more rewarding. Like, I can go play house phones. If I do it this way this time, maybe he'll do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not alone. It's more interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of times but sometimes the kid will find it at that moment that their need to do it their way and be in control is more important than interacting with the other kids. So they will, you know, hog all the toys or do it their way, or no, I'm going to be the dad in the family, and I don't care what anybody else says, because at that moment they really don't want to be with anybody else. They want to be doing their own way. And if that's what they want to do at that moment more than anything else, then they're not going to want to compromise. But 5 minutes later, they might be in a different mood.
One of the things that came up is this idea of being in a playground. We'll use your example. Being in a playground, having a child, and a younger child, and having an older child or other kids, sometimes an older child or maybe here, come and take the ball away from your child and kind of go away. And how to get over one's uncomfortableness in some language to use around that kind of a thing.
Well, since you said it's a public place, I think we've all experienced this where sometimes the other parent will jump in so quickly of, you know, you need to share, or they'll start doing the more typical ways, and you're actually okay with what's going on. And it can be hard because of the clash of cultures, because people are so quick to jump in. So sometimes just saying something out loud, like, it's okay with me if whatever. You were giving an example of your own child having a ball taken away.
Yeah,
right?
and so trying to protect your kid's right to get the ball back and to finish with the ball, and how to have that conversation with the kid you don't know, and maybe a parent you don't know.
And you know, often I remember as a kid, I remember still being frustrated, but my mother wouldn't do it for me. But she said, I will come with you. I will stand next to you. I will help you. But, you know, you need to tell him what you don't like. And so that was a big deal, because that took a lot of courage, even with my mom standing right next to me. But as much as we can, be the moral support. Say, I see that that girl took the ball away from you. Did you like that? Just prompt it. Maybe I was done with the ball. Yeah, that was part of the game. I didn't mind it. You don't assume there's a problem necessarily. Did you like that? And if they didn't like it, it's like, well, let's tell her. I'll come with you. And then you can walk over. You can put your hand on your child's shoulder to give them a little, you know, moral support. Walk over. And I usually talk directly child to child, and what tends to happen is that then the parent of the other kid runs out, you know, all in a tizzy, and gets all worried about, oh, what's wrong? What did my kid do? And then, so usually you have to explain to the adult, because usually an adult will show up on the scene pretty quickly. But just have them try to do the basic steps of conflict mediation and say, tell them what you didn't like. You took my ball. And often when they don't know each other, what happens varies. I mean, but often they will just give it back once somebody says, you know, you took it and I didn't like that. Other times you get a different reaction, but sometimes the reactions are much stronger from the adults around than from the kids.
Yeah. Well, and Robbie is 2, right? He's not 3 yet, right?
He's
Yeah.
almost 3.
I'm close to it.
Getting
But so
close.
I would think, and I don't know, you might disagree with me, Heather, but I would think he might say to him, do you want me to say those words for you? Because he you know, especially if it's a bigger kid, or this hasn't happened to him before. And that can often happen either in school, in the classroom, when somebody took my ball, well, let's go talk to him about it.
Right.
You can tell him, do you want me to say those words for you? And we often model that for kids and say the words for them. And then pretty quickly, then they're able to say those same words themselves because initially they might need the backup of a grown-up to actually say those words.
To get it started.
I
Yeah,
just
and
say that
that
is all
might be
such an
great.
interesting perspective. I mean, the most highly valuable hour of my day is probably right now.
Oh, wait till next year when you're here. We'll be here more than one morning.
And when you're talking for the child like that, I find it useful when you're speaking for them to say, did I get that right?
Yeah.
Check.
Double
Say,
check.
did I say what you meant to say? Or, and they will correct you because they know exactly what they want to say. And often we don't completely know. So even if they need a little help getting started and you say something for them, say, is that what the problem was? Or, did I get that right? What else happened? And then they will start chiming in. So, and sometimes the other parent in a public place really doesn't want you to be talking to their kid, or they're just so conflict averse that it makes them very uncomfortable. And sometimes just saying something like, I'm working on teaching, my kid, whatever the skill is that you can say, like, learning to talk to other kids directly or whatever, and that can make them relax. If you're saying, I'm working with my son on this, because then they don't feel like it's a threat, and they're relaxed. And sometimes it's just not worth it. You just okay, you're not going to win every conversation in the world, and that is perfectly fine.
I thought you had a lot of practical things for parents. This idea of, well, if this seems like too much, pick something. What is it that you want to work on? Start there. And this idea of how to do things when you're outside, and sometimes it's just not going to work. And so much of it is about being a reflective parent. And I think for a lot of parents, that's a skill that you work to develop. Because, and this listening to your kids and reflecting back and using the same language to make sure you're understanding what they're saying and to validate their point of view.
The other thing
And as far as taking small steps, it's not always even the topic you might be taking, but having a safe place to practice. If some of these ideas are new to you, well, a safe place to practice these is at Park West. A safe place to practice these is at home in your own family. Maybe it's a little scarier to practice these at the grandparents' house where things might be different. So, practice them in a place you're comfortable, and then take the step of practicing them somewhere else. And, the playground is the last place you might practice, because you have to be pretty confident yourself in what you're doing and how you're going to interact with your kid to do something that's a little counter to what most families would expect.
Heather, I really appreciate how you call out in this book that kids growing up is sort of a messy process, and that really as grown-ups we need to sort of stay in the moment, because I feel like what often trips me up is like, oh wow, he's keeping that toy forever, he's gonna turn out to be a grown-up who can't blah blah, right? I'm like forecasting into the future about what it means about their potential for employment and marriage. And then my reaction is so different, but I can stay sort of rooted in what's actually happening and forget about all of that other stuff. I'm able to be much more successful.
Yes, exactly. Yes. You could write that whole chapter. We all do that. And we do that when our kids are little and when they're bigger, and we sort of jump to these conclusions, and, it happens when they have a big feeling and we start to think, oh, they'll never control their feelings, and they'll never hold on to a job, and they're going to be living in my basement when I'm 85, and, we just jump to these conclusions.
Or she really hates it.
Yeah. And thinking about with big feelings, when it, have you all had kids who say, I hate you to you before?
I have a box full of notes from my daughter, many with a heart with a crack in it. You have broken my heart. You were so mean. I saved them. One day she's going to get them for Valentine's. Only after she has her own children.
You were so articulate.
Yeah. You always knew what you thought.
It is, I think it's a sign of deep love when they're saying the opposite, because Hate is the opposite word for love, and you are such a meaningful person to them. You are the center of their orbit. And when they're out of control, they're trying to pull the biggest punch they can and try to hurt you with the biggest word they can think of, which might be radiator or some big word that sounds oppressive, or it might be the word hate. And none of it matters. It just means that they're feeling out of control with a big feeling, and they need your support. And we just have to not take it personally. Or put it in a box and give it to them with your tears. And I think also to remember that they're scared. I have the benefit, I think, of remembering what my childhood felt like. I think a lot of adults do get amnesia, but I remember distinctly what it felt like to be a 4-year-old who was flailing on the floor and just so full of emotion that I would say something hurtful like that. And the next second after I said it, I was so terrified because I was afraid that my mother would stop loving me. That you've crossed the border, and then you're terrified. And so I still remember those feelings from the early years. And I think we need to remember that when they're saying these things or acting that way, they're giving us a signal that they need help, that they need us to be strong, and that we need to not descend to their level. We need to look at it from above and say, oh yes, this is perfectly normal for child development, and I'm going to react in a calm way. In fact, I look on page whatever.
Two of my parenting mantras that I say to myself a lot in those situations specifically are to be a thermometer or a thermostat instead of a thermometer, so I can set the temperature instead of rising with the temperature. That's really helpful to me. There was a particularly intense period where I would go over and put my hand on the thermostat as a physical reminder to not join in the rising of what was happening. But the other one is that patience is a behavior, not a feeling, and to give myself permission that I can be feeling all kinds of things internally and still choose to act in a way that's patient or loving, right? So I can be really ticked off and mad and frustrated that we're going on, minute 20 of whatever feeling my kid is having, but I can still act patient. And that's been a really helpful thing to me, because I don't always feel that way, but I can act that way.
Wow. You sound like you're well on your way. Sure. Keep on going. Yeah.
Do you have any other recommendations for, one of the remedy rules that you talk about, obviously you don't want to hurt anybody else, as long as it's not hurting any other child or anything. And instances happen at our home that don't really happen here at Park West, because I have 3 little girls at home, so they get on each other's nerves way more than I think they do in a social setting. One of them constantly, the middle one, will sometimes, when things get very tense, she'll be aggressive, and I always can tell, okay, I understand that you're feeling frustrated right now, but we don't hit, or I'll, make those comments. Or if you feel like you need to hit, go ahead and hit a pillow, or go ahead and go to the couch if that's, to get out. And she will, or she'll remove herself and it'll be done then. But then the instance will come up, 2 hours later or another, the next day. And I'm like, how many times are we going to have to do this statement? And it's going to have to keep going through before we kind of move forward. Or, should I say something different besides why don't you go hit a pillow? Or I can understand your feelings, and I feel it too right now. But where can we move on from this?
That couch when you're asleep.
Come on, girl, I got you. You're so passionate. I can see it in there, But I don't know where else to move forward from that.
Wouldn't it be nice if they could just get it on the first lesson?
Or the 15th, I don't know. Yeah.
No, it's funny because when I was writing, it's okay not to share, during the time I was writing it, I had very small children. I think they were about 2 and 5, those kind of ages. And I would be, writing about the topic of conflict or sharing or whatever it was. And then I'd come home and say goodbye to the babysitter. And then they demonstrate the same darn behavior that I'd just been describing how to, step by step, how to get out of it. Why hadn't they picked up on this? Okay. It takes a lot of repetition. It takes a lot of years. It takes a lot of maturity the emotions, the moral development, the social development. They are, I mean, your words are not falling on deaf ears. Your consistency is great. Saying the same words as long as you're saying what you've been saying is great. It will get through. It'll be sometimes some steps backwards, and you're ready for it to happen now, and not to have the same behavior repeated again the next day. But it gradually will get better. And impulse control and all these normal, natural steps of child development, they can't be rushed. They can be supported and guided in a loving way and set limits. If she's mad, she can flail around, but she can't knock over the fish tank. Or, you need a room to move your body right now because you're so mad. You can do it here, but you can't, set the limit on so you're not hurting people or property. But it may take them all a while, but as long as you're having that same reaction to accepting the feelings but limiting what they might hurt. And sometimes siblings need a break from each other. I like to protect a sibling to not have to be with the others. I mean, if you're on a car trip and they all have to be bumping together in the back seat, well, they can't get away from each other. But if you're in a house that maybe has more than one room, if one of them needs to be away from the other, say, you know what, it's hard right now for you to be with everybody. Would you like to do something and have a door between you? Would that be something useful? Not that you're shutting them away, but giving them an option. I will protect your right to be alone if you need some alone time. Alone time is not a bad thing, as long as it's not a punishment,
Right. I think the other thing that might be helpful is in a quiet moment when you're with her to say something like, you know what I've been thinking about? I've been thinking about how when you and Greta are together, this happened. And it seems like that happens a lot. I'm wondering, do you have any idea, and I know you, in some of the things you do is, you go punch the pillow or you go on the couch. Can you think of anything else that would help you? So I think it's like talking about it, first of all, means it's safe to talk about it. They know that you don't like it. And they know that you're at your wit's end certain days, right? And so I think to just lay it on the table, not in a high stakes moment, but in those quiet moments to open up a conversation. And at school, a lot of our conversations start with, you know what I've been wondering? You know what I've been thinking about? That makes it, it lowers the stakes a little bit. And asking kids, well, what do you think we could do to make you feel better? Or how else could you work off being mad? She may have some really good ideas. If you would get me tap shoes, I could really tap, and it would really, kids come up with the most amazing ideas that we didn't think of. They might not work, but and you could make a list. She has a whole bunch of them. Well, I don't know if these are going to work. Why don't we try them? Which one should we start with? And then and also it goes to this idea that, and Heather, you talk about the importance of having a note or something in hand. Kids this age are concrete thinkers and learners. They are not abstract. So to have something that's tangible is so meaningful for kids. And often, like when writing the note, oh, Mom, I missed you, that's all that they really, that frees them to be able to move on with the rest of their day. And some kids, that note is important, they'll hold it all day. Other kids, they don't need the note, they wrote it, and now they've moved on. So I think bringing her into it and saying, do you have any ideas? What else could we try?
I think it's also really useful for kids to the idea that feelings scale up. And so, like, maybe, I don't know how old she is, but like, I notice when you're starting to get mad, whatever that looks like for her, clench your fist, your face gets red, it looks like you're feeling hot, you start to walk, whatever those early signs are. Maybe we can start to pay attention for those, and that's when you could go take your alone time or go tear the phone book or newspaper, whatever those coping skills are, just like helping kids to notice it earlier. Because I feel like some kids are just so interested in everything that's going on, it doesn't really catch their attention until they are wanting to punch their sibling.
Right. Well, I think it always stems from her at those moments of chaos that are happening when we're all trying to get out, and she's not getting the attention that she wants, and we're concentrating on the older one or the younger one. Because they're, one's going to something and the other one is a baby, and so she's not getting that moment, and so that's what happens.
And sometimes just talking with the kid and helping them identify the trigger. That's
Right.
Every time we're getting ready to go out, you're getting so mad. I wonder what that's about. She might be able to say, "You never help me with my shoes," or whatever thing you might be able to generate ideas
Right.
about.
My middle child and I have a joke, like when she feels, she's older, whenever she feels like she'll be like, Mills out! In a situation where we're not focusing on her.
Yeah.
But I know exactly, but it's taught her to articulate, like, I'm getting so angry and it's irrational and I don't know why, but no, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what she's
Yeah.
saying, like she'll say that it's kind of a family joke, but she'll say it before she is desperate for the attention.
Right.
Yeah. So get into a joke too. Be like, feelings are funny. Like sometimes I think that helps too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you
It's normal. It's normal. to kind of like,
Yeah, I really love what you're saying about picking a calm time, because I think, and I don't want to pick on women, but sometimes we like to talk the problem out too much. There's too much words, and you know, the kid, especially if they're in a big emotion, they can't hear a lot of that anyway. But when they are in a calm time, even the next day or some other time, when they're feeling really steady, they've had food in their bellies, you know, they slept well the night before, then you can talk about some of these things. So it's having the courage to bring it out into the open at a time when there's no problem.
That's right.
When they're having a calm time. And you can even get books from the library about some of these emotions, or kids that have conflicts, or whatever the problem is, and read the book and say, I wonder if this ever happens to you, if you need a jump start with a conversation. But I love the thing of asking the expert, you know, asking the child for ideas. I remember when I was in preschool, I was terrified of one of my teachers. I would not go near her. I would not touch her. I wouldn't even be in the same room as her if I could help it. And so one of my teachers pretty much used your wording and said, I've noticed that you don't like to be near Ellen, teacher Ellen. I wonder what's going on with that. And I said, well, she has the measles. She had a lot of freckles. She was thoroughly freckled on her face and on her arms. And I knew that red dots meant measles, and that was very dangerous. And so at 4, I wouldn't touch her. And when they finally asked me, when they bothered to ask me, you know, why is this going on? I told them right away, and then they could explain, okay, she has freckles.
Yeah.
They're not going to hurt you.
In Park West Co-op, a red dot means it's a day we don't have school. On our calendars, we go with social knowledge, and so the days we're here, we mark with a green marker. Yes, it was a go day, we were here. And then the days we don't come to school are red dot days. So,
I see.
So yeah, so you might have thought that she was actually a calendar.
Well, it sounds like you have a very robust program. I was wondering if there's parts of this book that are very different from your philosophy, or ones that you're kind of intrigued to try, or it just all lines up nice.
I cannot think of anything in this book that we don't do already.
Only boxing, we've never.
Yeah,
done
we don't do
boxing. We do
boxing.
wrestling. but
That's right.
What a good idea.
Yeah, we don't do
Gloves.
boxing. And I would say,
Haven't done
in
boxing.
general, we don't have kids paint their bodies with paint. It's something that we don't usually do, but, I'm thinking about it.
Well, I think there have been times.
There have been times,
Certainly markered or
markers,
painted,
yes,
and
but I mean,
I
it's not
usually
like
say,
the free,
I usually say, how,
summer camp, the camp we do that stuff.
is that something that's okay at your house? I usually say.
Yeah. But I
And
think
it is
as far as
important to keep
mediation goes, that's so what we do with kids. Well, wait, what happened? Well, come on over here. This is what he thinks happened. Because so often it's a miscue. You know, we go for the intentionality. Oh, did you knock his blocks over? Did you mean to? No, it was my turn for the fishing game and I had to get there really fast. Oh, did you hear he didn't really mean to? You want him to help you fix it? Okay, we'll tell the teacher, hey, Anita, he's gonna play the fishing game. Will you hold his turn? Because first we're gonna do these blocks. So I kind of think we do pretty much everything, you're right, except the boxing. And there is a rumor that you're gonna be in Chicago in September. And if you are, we would love to have you come and sit in on our classroom and see what you think.
Very
If you
cool.
have the time, we'd love to host you so that you can see, hey, Illinois can do that stuff too. Because you got Michigan, you got Ohio, so now, we want to introduce you to the world in Chicago.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'll keep you posted because I'm in discussions with the school to have me come down September 25th. So if that works out, I will let you know, and we can probably piggyback some way.
Great, we'd love to see you and have you come and check us out. Because we agree with everything that you think.
I must admit, that is rare. So you need to
Wow.
pat yourselves in the back because there's many people who say, well, I agree with, say, 20 out of the 29, or there's people that, it's fine to me if they pick and choose. I figure at some point, if they really care about kids and study child development, they will get to the full 29. But you can't force people, you can't hurry them, because there's also adult emotional development that goes on, and you can't rush it. But there are certain people that, and your school is now included, who embrace the whole philosophy and truly get kids and child development. And to me, that means that there's a huge level of respect, that you really respect children and treat, to me, respecting someone is understanding their needs and supporting those needs. And a lot of adults, of course, think kids need different things, like you need to learn to read by age 3 now, is a lot of what adults are thinking these days. So they're rushing to try to support those needs when actually they don't need that at that age. So
Our school motto is where children and their ideas are taken seriously.
Mhm.
We started in 1971, and Park West was started not by a teacher, not by an administrator, but by parents. And it's very significant to me that parents started the school. They didn't need somebody with an educational degree to say, we could start a school. And
I thought you were going to say it was started by children.
Say that again?
A good sense of observation to understand what environment a child would like to be in. How would they like to be treated as human beings, in order to create the program you have.
Thanks so much. Thank you for being with us, Heather. It was really a treat that you would want to share. We're part of the band right now, and we'd love to see you, and we'd like to know where you're, if this works out and you're going to speak somewhere. I would love to let our parents know about it if parents from other schools are allowed to come, or if they have the room. I would think some of our parents would be happy to learn more from you.
Great. I will keep you up to date. It was great meeting you all and hearing your stories, and keep on the good work. It's very heartwarming.
Thank
you.
Thank you. And we appreciate your work too. Thank you so much. This is going to help a lot of parents and probably a lot of teachers.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was kind of fun.
great.
Yeah.
Very first the end.
Very nice.
This time.
Brainies, it's just on to piggyback on my earlier conversation about brain development. It's a documentary film about brain development based on neuro research, and it's pretty excellent.
Where do you, is it Netflix?
I think it's like you have to buy it off like YouTube or whatnot.
Oh,
So it's like
okay.
$10 or something,
Oh,
but I don't
okay.
know, it might be
Oh,
something
yeah,
like
I would like to get it.
yeah, so
Oh, thanks.
yeah, I just learned
It's
about it
still
tonight,
live.
actually, another.
Oh, we're still live. Oh,
Oh,
but we don't have a picture.
Did you say the name of the documentary again?